All right, so taking care of business first. Again, welcome to everybody. My name is Bill Breen, and I teach English on the Cambridge campus of Anoka Ramsey Community College. And I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues officially, some unofficially, who are also with us tonight. But Kate Maurer and Kelly Meyer also teach on the Cambridge campus, and they're here helping out. I'm calling them our bouncers tonight. They're watching the door. And they're also going to help out with the questions in the chat later on. So our Minnesota Writers Series, we have two writer series, one on each campus. On the Coon Rapids campus, it's the Two Rivers Reading Series, and in Cambridge, we have the Minnesota Writers Series. So we've been, for over 30 years, we've been bringing writers to the Cambridge campus, or now to Zoom. And bring some of the best literary voices, people doing poetry, spoken word, fiction writers, novelists, essayists. And we're especially excited tonight because Michael Starrbury is the first screenwriter that we've had. And I can't wait to ask questions about that whole process, that whole world. And I know a lot of you are excited about that too. I'll put, or Kelly or Kate will put a link in the chat for the Minnesota Writers Series if you want to see a little bit more about what we do and past writers and things like that. I also want to just give a quick plug for our English programs at Anoka Ramsey Community College. We have different two-year degrees in literature and creative writing, a certificate in creative writing. And so we'll get a link in the chat if you want to check those out. If you're not a student currently and you're interested in those programs, you can find info there. I also wanted to give a quick plug for something that's only tangentially related, but it is related. There's an event coming up at the end of October, a reading from the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop, and that's an organization that I've worked with. And I bring it up for three reasons. First of all, if you're looking for another reading kind of event, that's one that's coming up soon. I should also mention we have on November 3rd, poet Michael Torres will be the featured writer for the Two Rivers Reading Series at our other campus. But the Minnesota Writers Series, or the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop, is an organization that teaches creative writing in the state prisons. And so on that event, which I believe is October 30th, and we'll get a link in the chat for that, you will hear the work of writers who are currently incarcerated, writers who are now out, and reading their work live on Zoom. There'll be some video recordings and also some readings by some of our instructors. And I bring it up also because it ties to some of the work that Michael Starrbury has done, particularly the series When They See Us. And also it was through a mutual connection, it was how I was able to get in touch with Michael Starrbury through a local screenwriter by the name of David Lawrence Grant, who connected me with Michael. He also teaches with the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop. So that's my plug. Let me give a brief intro for Michael, and then we will get started. Michael Starrbury is an actor, screenwriter, and producer based in the Twin Cities. His work with Ava DuVernay on When They See Us garnered a 2019 Emmy nomination in the Outstanding Writing for a Limited Series, Movie, or Dramatic Special category. He also wrote the feature-length film The Inevitable Defeat of Mr. and Pete, which was nominated for an Independent Spirit Award and an NAACP Image Award, and is now streaming on Netflix. Starrbury has recently collaborated again and again. I know there's another one, but coming out on October 29th is Colin in Black and White, a series about NFL quarterback and activist Colin Kaepernick. And then there's another collaboration in the works that I hope he'll talk about, called The Battle of Versailles. Again, we are thrilled to have Michael joining us. Please wave, shout a muted shout, and welcome Michael.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
All right, so I want to start at the beginning um, to have you talk a little bit about where you got started, when maybe you felt some of those first inklings of writing, or maybe it was acting, or maybe you just knew you wanted to create. What's the origin story of the screenwriter Michael Starrbury?
The origin for me, it's I never set out to be a screenwriter. That wasn't the goal. The goal was to be a director. I wanted to direct movies. I did not have a script to direct, so I learned how to write them. And once I started writing them, I kind of fell in love with it. I there's some things about writing that just fit my personality. Uh, I don't mind being alone. I'm curious by nature, so I love studying. And it's kind of like a Rubik's Cube where you're always constantly trying to figure out the stories, the structure. So it's perfect for me. I could do it alone. It was cheap, you know, it didn't cost anything to sit down with your imagination and try to create a story. So it was perfect for me, the writing part of it. So that's really what started it. It was watching movies by Spike Lee, Quentin Tarantino, uh, Steven Soderbergh. Like those guys were the kind of the inspiration for me early on. I wanted to make movies like that. And on the writing side, then I kind of fell in love with like Elmore Leonard books, and those kind of crime stories with levity. And I just kind of emulated those guys, and until I found my own voice and people started to respond to my work. So I became a screenwriter while I'm still working on becoming a director.
So what were some of those first times that you showed your work to other people? Was it like in a school setting? Who gave you encouragement along the way?
Um, I didn't have a lot of encouragement. I did a lot of failing in obscurity. That's what I like to call it. Uh, I would do contests, fellowships. I did the McKnight Fellowship, which is a big one. Eventually, I won that one, and then I ended up winning it 2 more times. And that's when I started to feel like I was ready. Whoever that is should mute.
Thank you.
Anyways, I'll just talk over.
Now you're muted, Michael. There we go.
Okay, sorry about that. So I met some friends along the way with similar interests. Uh, through the years, you would meet them, I don't know, through social media somehow. And I was lucky enough to make friends with someone at the Austin Screenwriters Conference, which is a part of the festival. And, you know, she introduced me to someone who had Hollywood connections. And me and him, his name is George, we became good friends. And he was really good with story. Like, I mean, he was fantastic with story. So he was really the first person that I started sending my work to. And I would get notes back from him. And I sent him my script, The Inevitable Defeat of Mr. and Pete. And he liked it so much that he sent it to a director, and that director ended up making the movie. So and initially I was just doing contests, fellowships, and things like that. But I kind of just trusted that I was getting better at it. I think as a writer, you kind of know. Like I felt like in the moment when I wrote Mr. and Pete, like this, it felt different than anything else that I had been writing, because I felt like all the other stuff was just me trying to find my voice. I'm just searching for a way to tell stories in a way that I can tell them. And at the same time, I'm even learning prose and sentence structure and all these things. And I'm self-taught. Like I didn't go to college. So I'm sitting there and I'm going through these steps, teaching myself how to construct an engaging sentence. And So for me, that's what it was. It was just failing, failing, failing until it was like, this one feels right. This one reads well. This one feels like it's eliciting the right emotions. And now I feel good about where I am. So a lot of trial and error, trusting a small circle of people. And then ultimately, there's some luck involved in screenwriting. And I got lucky.
So it sounds like that writing Mr. and Pete, it was a pretty direct route to getting that film made. You didn't shop it around. You didn't work on it for 10 years.
No, actually, I did not. I probably worked on it for less than yeah, I know I did. I worked on it for less than a year, but I mean, let's not discount the work that I did for the years prior to be able to work on that for less than a year to make that into the story that it was. So that one did come out fairly quickly, but it wasn't without the reps that it took to be able to write that thing fairly quickly.
So can we talk about that one a little bit?
Mr. and Pete?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love talking about Mr. and Pete.
Oh, good. I know you're doing all kinds of other things, so I don't know, you got to kind of remember back, but it's such a great story. And it just came out on Netflix recently, right? That's a pretty recent.
Well, the movie was released in 2000. We were at Sundance in 2013. Yeah, we were at Sundance in 2013. It's been on Netflix, it's been on Amazon, it's been on Hulu, it's been everywhere since then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I know it was off Netflix for a while, but now apparently it's back on. So
yeah, if it's on right now, you're breaking news to me. I didn't even know.
It is. Kelly broke that news to me yesterday.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So there's so many just great things about that. I know, I hope this isn't, well, I'm just going to ask the question, how much of you is in that film? How much of your own story? Because, this kid's got this dream. Clearly he's got the Fargo poster, and, is there a seed of you in that?
It's I don't mean to make this sound like super cliche, but there's pieces of me in every single one of those characters. I did grow up in the projects in Milwaukee, so I can write about that with sincerity. There's some, genuineness to that world for me. His struggles were either similar to something that I've been through or something that I've seen, and the same with Pete, the same with the mom, having the local kind of like the community police officers around, like all of that stuff, having the drug dealers around, all of that stuff is, people always, that question you ask me, I get that all the time. And I think that's a testament to George Tillman's directing and Reed Morano's cinematography, because the way they made that film makes it feel real, but the story should feel real as well. So, you take real life. I'm not like a super reader, but I read enough, to get the human experience and try to put that on the page so that I can share it with the world. That's really all it is. It's just paying attention to what was around me and trying to give the world an idea of what that could be like. And I think we caught that on film pretty well.
So, and that's why I hesitated to ask the question, because I assume you get asked that all the time.
Oh, but that's okay. No, I think it's I get it though, because there's always the write what you know kind of idiom, and I don't know. I think it's write what you're curious about. At least that's the approach I take, and that was just something that I felt. The reason that, the entire reason I wrote the story was because around that time I was writing it in 2008, 2009, there was a lot of talk about recession and Wall Street and people losing money. And I always felt like here's a group of people, where I used to be amongst this group of people who have been in poverty and will remain in poverty no matter what's going on Wall Street. I wanted to tell a story about them, and I wanted to do it through kids' eyes. And that was essentially where the idea came from, is just to tell a story about something that continues to go on no matter what happens, with the people we hear about on the news losing money. The projects where I grew up, they're still there. And to me that says, there's a system that's preventing people from being upwardly mobile. So, what's going on that's making this thing happen, and what's being ignored about that. I wanted to do that, but I didn't want to do it from like an outsider point of view. Let's deal with what we can deal with, and hopefully people will see it. And if they don't have empathy for it, at least they'll understand it at the end of the day.
Mentioning all the people, the stories of all these people, that's one of the things that struck me about that story is, obviously we have Mr. at the center, who is just this great kid filled with spirit. He's got dreams, he's got sense of humor, he's got pressure from all sides. So there's like the arc of his story, but there are all these other side stories. There's, his mother, there's the, I can't think of her name, that Jordan Sparks plays.
Yeah, Alice.
There's the homeless veteran. There's that dipstick guy. He's running into all these guys along the way, and there's these little side stories. Is that part of the? I mean, I know there must be some satisfaction in representing all those people, but in terms of the writing, tying them together, is that part of the thrill, the challenge to weave all those stories together?
Yeah, I think, the fact that people think I did it successfully feels good, because it's not, as I'm writing the story, I'm not thinking about how difficult it is. The idea is always just to make sure I'm putting the right emotion on the page. This scene, is it doing the right thing to move the story forward? Is it landing where it's supposed to land? Are the every character in it serves a purpose? There's no, I try not to have any extra fat in the script. I do have a tendency to write longer dialogue moments, and that's what rewriting is for. But yeah, I think that everyone involved in that story has, some kind of moment there. If I have any regrets, not regrets, if I had some more space, I probably would work on at Pete's mom a little bit more, maybe just one more scene, and maybe one more scene with Mr.'s mom, outside of Mr. himself. So, but it's hard to jump out of point of view. I don't know how technical to get when I'm speaking. I don't want to throw anybody off. Is it okay to how deep?
Go deep. We'll ask questions if we don't understand.
Okay. Yeah. So but I felt good about the characters. Spike Lee did it brilliantly and Do the Right Thing. That was an inspiration. Steven Soderbergh did it a little bit in King of the Hill, which was another movie that inspired me for this story. Yeah.
I wondered if were there conversations with the director about that Do the Right Thing influence, because like this character Dipstick, coming up on his face seemed like kind of a Spike Lee moment. There were a few of those moments where it's like, okay, now we're going to profile this person just for a short time.
Mm-hmm.
But then like I said, it is tied into the story. It's essential to how things develop.
Yeah, I guess I never even asked him how much of an influence for his directing the that Do the Right Thing would have been. But I like ensemble pieces anyway. So it was even Robert Altman films, it was Paul Thomas Anderson films. Like, as weird as it may seem, Boogie Nights was an influence, so it's I can't speak for George, but all of those ensembles, but kind of through the point of view of this one kid, making sure that I kind of stay with him we see the world through his eyes. It's interesting because I one of the comments that I used to get initially about Mr. and Pete was people would say at first I hated Mr., but then by the end I just loved that kid. And that made me proud because I have these arguments now with executives at studios about characters being likable. And I always tell them, an audience will stick with someone who may not seem likable as long as he's engaging, or she's engaging. The idea isn't to, just write likable characters. The idea is to, you know, tell stories about engaging people, who have an interest, people who, again, you can write a story that may not even be personal to you. You know, most people don't go through what Mr. and Pete went through, but it should be, at the very least, you should have some empathy or sympathy for them based on, who they are and what they're trying to accomplish, and I think that that's one of the important points of that story. I didn't want to make him, I could have made him easily, the kid who, when the teacher, is trying to help him, and he just kind of kowtows to the teacher or whatever, and whatever, but he stands up for himself, and I just want to make him a little more real, like the kids that I knew growing up. And if I can just add one more thing, there's another movie that ultimately was kind of an influence on it, but in a different kind of way, The Blind Side, which I don't like at all. I don't like how the character was treated in that film at all. And I wanted to make sure Mr. did not have those qualities. So that was kind of important to me as well.
All right, so take us from Mr. and Pete to, in terms of kind of your, opportunities that started coming your way, and from Mr. Pete to When They See Us. And I know there were different projects, maybe some things that you were shopping around. Did the doors kind of open after Mr. and Pete for you?
Yeah, but not because of Mr. and Pete. So it's weird. It's a weird industry. When Mr. and Pete was out and about, it's a drama, it's an indie. So that wasn't really what they were checking for in Hollywood at the time. But having spent all these years writing, I had other scripts. And that's the thing they are interested in. What else do you have? So I had a half-hour comedy that Comedy Central bought, and David Gordon Green, the director, we went off and made the pilot. That was a bigger kind of influence on what would become my career. Then I sold another show later on, an animated series to Comedy Central called Legends of Chamberlain Heights, where I was one of the co-creators. Worked on that for a couple of years. As I was working on that, Ava, who hadn't seen Mr. and Pete but read the script, reached out to me, and I had a meeting with her. And you mentioned Battle of Versailles. It was a book called Battle of Versailles. It's about a fashion show that took place in 1973 between Americans and the French. And she was looking for someone to write it. She liked my script and, wanted to meet with me. I read the book. I pitched her my idea, and we've been close ever since. We've been good friends ever since. At the same time, she's working on a project called Central Park 5, which turned into When They See Us. So as I was working on Battle of Versailles, which is at HBO now, and I have nothing to do with it anymore, she called me and asked if I wanted to write the last part of When They See Us. And I said, sure. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. They had been working on it for a year, interviewing the guys, doing their deep research. And I didn't have any time like that. But she sent me all of their research. I plowed through it, and I wrote that script in 6 days. And as you know, I was nominated for an Emmy for it. I'm not a fast writer. Let me just, I'm not. What I am is a dedicated writer. That's what happened when I was, starting out, when I began talking to you, I was telling you, I don't mind being by myself. I don't mind, just dealing with my imagination. I'm not a fast writer. I'm not a fast reader, but I'll do it. And so it just, when it gets done, it seems like it was fast, but it really wasn't. 6 days. I mean, maybe that is pretty fast, but it was a marathon session for me. So I worked on that script. Netflix loved it, thank goodness. And then I ended up doing a little work on the other parts of it too, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can find sprinkles of me in there. As a matter of fact, in 4, I took a scene that was in Mr. and Pete that I didn't end up using and putting it in 4. If anybody's seen When They See Us, the whole Chia Pet thing was in Mr. and Pete. And so I took that and put that in When They See Us. So yeah, that's how I ended up meeting her. It was just, she read my script and enjoyed it. And then we became, good collaborators, and as you know, now, I was the showrunner on the Colin Kaepernick series that comes out October 29th on Netflix.
Yeah. So that 6 days, was that you had a timeline, or was it, this is a great opportunity and a really important project, and I want to show what I can do? Like, what was that? I'm really curious what that 6 days was like, because
So
it had been crazy.
She needed it. Well, Hollywood's always saying they need stuff sooner than they actually need it. But she said she needed it fairly quickly. So I turned it around. I understand this. I did not know if anybody was going to like that script at all. When I was reading the research, and it's tell a story about a kid who's mostly going to be in solitary confinement, I had never been challenged like that as a writer, but the curiosity in me took over, and I just said to myself, what would I do if I was stuck, in a jail cell, in a prison cell, all by myself? I would use my imagination. And I had a spine, I had something to work with. I knew what I could do with that story then. And so I started playing with that, and 6 days later, I was typing the end. So yeah, I've always taken the approach, like I don't write any differently today than I did when I was doing it for free. Like, it's the absolute same approach for me. No matter what I'm working on, I'm just trying to improve as a screenwriter every time out. And hopefully, a lot of scripts are not written to be read and enjoyed, but I write scripts as if this may be the last part of the project, meaning, if it doesn't turn into a movie or a TV series, at least you can enjoy reading the script, and that is a challenge in itself, because screenplays are really meant to be shot, and they're made, meant to be made into movies. But I do like to try to make it as an enjoyable of a read as I can. And that was my goal there. And I think it worked.
Well, I want to ask you about a couple moments in that 4th episode, including the solitary, all those where he's doing kind of the flashbacks. But first, when Corey Wise his first night in, and that guy is singing Moon River, and the shouting, and he kind of, coils into a ball. Yep. I mean, that's just a heart-wrenching but brilliant moment, because you have that contrast of that beautiful singing, and then the rage and the violence, and then we see, that guy actually gets beat down the next day in the cafeteria. There's no question. I just wanted to tell you that that's a fantastic scene.
I appreciate that. I can give you a little bit of trivia on that too. So in the script, it was actually Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and we couldn't get the rights. So yeah, in my head when I wrote it, like he was singing this Elton John song, and it was like still this beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And that turned really violent.
Yeah, it's just a really powerful moment. And not to overanalyze it, but that singing is like, the spirit of Corey and everyone else, that
Mhm.
kind of beauty and spirit, and it just gets crushed. And that's, it sets that whole, part of the story in motion. So yeah, the scenes where he's in solitary are also really powerful, and I can imagine what a challenge that was to write those. I felt like, and we know, the solitary confinement, especially for developing brains, is essentially torture. The mental health havoc that wreaks on a person. But I was just really taken by the variety of, he's replaying his mistakes. He's replaying his best moments.
Mhm.
He's even doing some kind of healing,
Mhm.
these dialogues that he's creating. And I mean, you mentioned dialogue before. Do you really enjoy writing those interactions between characters?
My favorite stuff to do, and probably the thing that I need to work on the most because it's the most challenging for me. I love hearing different styles of speech. I'm a big Coen Brothers fan, and anyone who's watched their films, they capture dialect so well. Uh, that's a goal of mine, is to be able to do something like that. But yeah, I love, just characters. There's this film, again, if I'm being too, film geekish, I apologize, but there's this movie, My Dinner with Andre, and you know it's just all dialogue, it's a conversation, and I love that movie. And 12 Angry Men, the original one, I love that movie. It's just 12 angry men talking. So yeah, I'm a big fan of dialogue, and obviously Tarantino is the modern day master. So yeah.
Yeah. I also just found those moments to be, just in terms of the story, what Corey Wise is going through is so brutal, and so as viewers, we need that, like, escape too.
Yeah, right.
you know
Hmm. Hmm. That
uh,
was, yeah, that was part of the reason I stuck the Chia Pet stuff in there. Just a
uh-huh,
little breather.
right, in Coney Island, that
The
little.
Coney Islands, yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
How did it feel for you personally to work on such an important project, to tell that story, just in terms of, like, did you ever imagine doing something like this? Did it feel like this is meaningful?
No, I didn't know, because, and I think it's just because the way Hollywood works, you never know what the reception is going to be. You know, I'm sure there's movies about very important events that we've never heard of or never seen. That just didn't either turn out right or didn't get marketed correctly or whatever the case may be. So again, I'm taking the same approach as if this may be the last time I get to write anything. I need to, make sure people enjoy the writing and can read the story and visualize the story is visceral enough. That's my only goal. Like, I'm not thinking about, the impact it had, which was tremendous. As a matter of fact, I don't know what would have happened if I would have started thinking about it in that way. If I'm thinking about how's Corey Wise going, what's he going to think about this, or what are the other guys going to think about, these little moments and this minutia of the story. I can't do that. My goal is to, or as a writer, I have to put the spirit of the truth in cinematic form on the page. that's all I can think about. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't feel the pressure to in that kind of way, but I'm also the guy who had to be convinced to go to the Emmys. Like that, I don't care about that part of it even. Like, so I'm happy. The best thing that happened was these guys are, you know, they feel free now. They feel like people know their story. They appreciate what we've done for them. You know, that's the best part about it. People know their story and they seem happy. The goal for me was just to tell the story, as honestly and sincerely as I could.
Yeah, I mean that moment of them actually attending the Emmys, it was like another exoneration.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, to be publicly celebrated like that. Yeah. I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about Colin in Black and White, but first, you've talked about some of the misconceptions of the industry, but I think a lot of us are curious, what else? What else would we be surprised to learn about how this whole, machinery works, or maybe on the writer end, maybe when you lose control of a project, or anything along those lines would be great to hear about.
Yeah. I don't know. It's you try to work with people who it's not necessarily creative control because you want to collaborate. If you're working with people who are on the same wavelength as you, things tend to turn out better. There's the idea of some things being for commerce and some things being for, kind of the art of it. There's a lot more of the commerce side of it, and I lean toward the art side as a writer. So there's always going to be a little bit of conflict. I shouldn't even say art. That's not even fair, because when I think about my animated series, I saw it as a satirical show about millennials, and other people just wanted fart jokes. And so, there's conflict there. Like both of those can be fine, and find an audience, but there's a little conflict there. And so I don't know if that's a misconception. I think the misconception would be, well, here's a misconception. I don't know all the big Hollywood stars. People think, I mean, I know a few. I got a few names in my phone, but writers are still writers in Hollywood. We're no one's really, we're not the glamour, above the line, people. But really, I don't know. It's I live in Minnesota. Like I'm literally in Brooklyn Park right now. Like I don't really get into the Hollywood side of it. My idea of working out there, and I'll admit I'm doing well. I mean, I have a overall deal at Netflix. I'm writing movies right now. I'm doing well, and I'm doing it from home, but I never got into it to be anything other than a movie director, which I'm still chasing, So, I don't know the misconception. I don't know the misconceptions because I'm making my own path, and I just deal with the obstacles as they come.
That's great. Anything you want to tell us about the Colin series, Colin Kaepernick series? It's coming out soon. We'll be able to watch it for ourselves, but
yeah, I think that, again, with Colin, just like everything else, the idea was not for me to go in and say, here's an angel, I want to change any misconceptions about him. That wasn't the goal. The idea was, where did this courage to do what he did come from? So, we took his high school years, and I don't want to give too much away because I think it's uniquely kind of structured and formatted. I think people are going to dig that part of it. But the idea was to have the real life Colin be able to reflect on his childhood while simultaneously, taking points of history and even current events and showing us how, it formed him and, informed him to be the guy who he became. Now, that sounds like a lot. At the end of the day, there's levity throughout this thing. It's not nearly as serious as when they see us. One of my goals was to make it rewatchable, so someone can watch, I really like episode 2. I want to watch that, sometime again, or episode 4 or whatever. So it's definitely rewatchable. It's a half hour, and I think people will dig it. And the kid who plays young Colin Kaepernick, Jaden Michael, is amazing in it. He's really good, really, really good.
Yeah, I'm really anxious to see that format, because even the trailer suggests pretty interesting format with him kind of narrating and maybe dramatizing scenes from his early life, right? Is that?
Yeah, that's a fair way to look at it. I think you'll get lost in that, in the narrative of it. It won't feel so much like that. It should feel seamless, and I think that works. I hope that works.
All right, great. I have about 20 more questions I could ask, but I do want to open it up to anyone who's joining us tonight. So Kelly, are you going to see if we have any questions?
I did just ask people to type any questions they have in the chat, but I don't see any yet. How about you ask one more of yours, and then I would ask one too. Oh, we do have one in the chat now. Not a question, but
I see that. That's funny. I don't. If I inspired listen. Anything I'm doing, believe me, this poor ghetto boy, if I could do it, anybody in these boxes could do it, because there was nothing extraordinary about what I did other than put my head down and found something that I was passionate about. So I'm glad I can inspire. It's doable. This thing, if you want to tell stories on this level, it's definitely doable.
Kelly, what's your question?
Well, I actually just watched Mr. and Pete this morning. I decided to make it a part of my workday while my son was at school. I was like, this is an excellent way to spend my work morning. And I love how the movie opens and closes with Mr. in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so a question I wanted to ask is if you have any memorably affirming or discouraging experiences as a student. I know you said you're a self-taught writer, so maybe it wouldn't be specifically writing, but just, as most of us here are educators and students, I was just wondering if you had any of those memorable experiences in a classroom, like Mr. had, for good or for bad.
Yeah, one of the good experiences. So I was always one of the smarter kids, right? In elementary school, I was the only kid in class who had a computer. It was the school's computer, but they put me at the desk with the computer. My teachers would take me to, I remember they were talking about, there's this old movie that we want to take a couple of students to see, and it was Stanley Kubrick's 2001. And I remember sitting in the theater with the teacher watching this, and I'm a little kid, and I'm thinking, this is so boring. Like, what on earth is is happening here? But it's still a great memory. I remember going to the movies with a teacher, and that was great. So that was all in Milwaukee. And then I moved here. I went to Osseo, and in Milwaukee, I was around 99% Black people. When I moved here, it flipped. And it was not easy for me. It wasn't an easy transition for me. The one thing I'll say that it did do for me was it made me realize, and I don't mean this offensively, but you watch television, you get an idea that white people are elevated. they're, you watch a sitcom and it's just like, wow, look at their lives. Like, these little bit of problems, they, fix it in 25 minutes. It's amazing. I move here and I'm like, wait a minute, these people struggle just like we do. Like, there's nothing special about what they're doing in their lives. As a matter of fact, there's some real like problems here. What that did for me was it made me actually more comfortable around all people. It made me comfortable around all people. It made me able to write, white people, Black people, any kind of religious person, because I felt more confident that people are just people at the end of the day. We come from different places. We might have different experiences, but people are just people. In high school, I struggled because I was just trying to find my way. I didn't have any teachers who looked at me different. Like in Milwaukee, people saw potential in me. In Minnesota, it was me struggling to find any kind of click, any kind of way to fit in. And I couldn't do that. And my father was, not helpful in that. So high school was more of a struggle for me. I mean, I made it through, but it was more of a struggle for me. And I didn't have teachers who encourage. One of my proudest moments was after Mr. and Pete was at Sundance. I got a message from a young lady who said, after watching your movie, I made up my mind. I was on the fence. I made up my mind. I'm going to be a teacher. And I kept that letter. Like, I got a bunch of letters, but that's one I kept. I was just like, well, that means more to me than like any other the accolades, like, who cares about that other stuff? Now you're really affecting people's lives, and I don't know, if you go online, if you go into YouTube and just put like Michelle Obama, Mr. and Pete, you'll see her at the White House talking about it. And I'm like right off to the side, like just staring up at her, like, this is really happening. Like, oh my God, this is crazy. So yeah, a lot of good things happen from that. And, I think that all of the experiences that I had, enabled that to happen. And it could be, even subconsciously, why Mr. reacted to his teacher the way he reacted to him. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, even though I do try to play one for my characters, but I don't know. I don't know. Maybe.
Any other questions in the chat? I do have another question ready, but Kelly, is there anything in there? I actually can't open it. My screen is like that.
Oh yeah, Kate, why don't you go ahead and ask one?
Well, okay. I'm very interested in drama. That's sort of my deal. And so I'm wondering, could you tell us a little bit about how writing for the screen compares to writing for a live theater? A lot of the same stuff. Does it overlap?
I've never written for live theater, so I have no idea. None. I can tell you about writing for the screen though, because again, I have little goals for myself. I want my scripts to be readable, whether a director or a studio is going to make it or not. But the other goal of mine is to make actors fall in love with it. And a lot of the times when you're writing for actors, it can be contradictory to what a studio may want. Actors love, to perform. They want characters who go through some things. Studio may just say, well, we're thinking of, Vin Diesel for this. So we need you to, cut this intimate scene or whatever. And it can be anything like that. So I don't know, from what I know about writing for like the stage and like theater, the writers like more, the authority figure. When I'm writing for a movie for Universal, I'm just hoping that the executive that's on the project and I are on the same page, So yeah, that would be the main difference. And that's kind of why I write a lot of spec scripts too, where, I'll just write it and then, either hope to sell it or make it someday, instead of just, someone hiring me to write a script.
So my last question is, what does writing look like for you? So when you sit down, is it chaos? Is it scraps of paper? Is it a clean desk, a clean screen? Are you methodical? Are you all over the place? I'm always curious because I think it really is different from one writer to the next. What is that? If you don't mind talking about, what it actually looks like when you're, grinding it out.
I don't like blank pages. So I write outlines first. It's not even an outline, it's a beat sheet, because here's my process. I have an idea, right? I'll see if the idea is a movie or a TV show. If it's a movie, I'll take a shower and I'll watch the whole movie. I'll just sit in the shower and just watch it. I'll come out of the shower and I'll type out the beats, this happens, this happens, this happens. Then I'll leave it. Then I'll say, okay, let me see if I have a movie here. Then I'll just start writing it. And if it feels like a movie, I'll know, I'll know a few pages in, it's like, this is a film. This is a film. Keep going. And I don't mind writing kind of rough drafts. A lot of, people like to be altered, like this character is going to do this and this character. I love learning and going on a journey with my characters. Like if I can go, ooh, like as a writing, that means something. When I was writing Mr. and Pete, I remember the first moment where he goes into that bodega, that corner store, and he's having that like little back and forth with the store owner, the guy who works there. And he just blurts the F word to him. Like, I didn't know, it just came out. I was just like, oh, okay. I think I know who this kid is now. Like, I'm getting it. Like, this kid's got some issues. So, and then, I'm just off and running from there. So yeah, I'm discovering as I go. And as long as I have some kind of a roadmap, so I'm just not looking at completely white pages, then I feel pretty good. Something to, kind of a map, just something to guide me, not too much detail because I like to be surprised.
That's great. That's really great to hear you talk in detail about that process. I think a lot of us are really curious about that with writers and know that it's different. Probably part of it is figuring out what works for you may not work for somebody else and vice versa. Any other questions in the chat before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I would love to ask Andreesa's question because inadvertently you already answered Maya's question about any tips on the writing process, and Betsy asked a great question too about creative control. So the one from Andreesa is it your plan to direct one of your own screenplays one day? Yes,
so I'm working on that now. As a matter of fact, as we've been talking, I've been getting messages about it. There's a project that I had called Watch Roger Do His Thing. Hollywood has this thing called the Blacklist, where they put, annually the best screenplays that were not produced that year or whatever. Well, my script, Watch Roger Do His Thing, was on that list, and it's been on that list forever. And it's, since 2011, it was on that list. So I've had some false starts with it, not as a director, but speaking of Vin Diesel was attached to star in it. Anthony Mackie was attached to star in it. There's been a whole thing with it. And one day a producer called my manager and said, hey, what's going on with Watch Roger Do His Thing? And so my manager calls me and says, producer's checking on it. He wants to know like what's going on with it. I said, just tell him I want to direct it. Just throwing it out there. Like, I just want to direct it. And they were like, okay. And so now we're working on, me becoming this thing that I've been trying to do since, the beginning. I think I won my first McKnight Fellowship in 2003. That's when I kind of say that's when I started to take writing seriously. But I did apply. I think I was a finalist in 2000 when I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I honestly didn't. But the McKnight Fellowship I was a finalist first in 2000. That's when I was learning how to write. In 2003, I felt like I had a good idea how to become a writer, and I just kept working and working and working. So it's been, 20 whatever years, trying to make it happen. And yeah. So even that's been a while. So sorry about that long answer. Yes, anything I direct will probably be from what I've written, even though my agent and manager surely want me to direct other things. I do get things sent to me to direct, and I pass on all of those things. So I do have an opportunity to direct things. I want to direct my own thing. People laugh at me because I say I had to become kind of a well-known Hollywood screenwriter in order to become an independent filmmaker. And that's backwards, but again, everybody has their own path.
Yeah, good stuff. Any other questions tonight?
That's it for our questions in the chat.
All right, well, in perfect timing, it's 8 o'clock. So I just, on behalf of all of us, Michael, thanks so much for taking the time tonight. I know you don't have to do this. You got all kinds of things to keep you busy and stimulated. And the fact that you took the time to talk about your work and your craft, we all appreciate it very much. So I would love it if everyone who's willing would unmute and give their applause, give a shout, give a whistle, whatever, to say thank you to Michael tonight.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
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 Thank you
All right,
all. Thanks for tolerating me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for coming, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
So how do I, oh, right here. Leave meeting.
Bill, did you need anything else from me?
Nope,
Okay.
we're all set. I'll email you if I need you to sign anything else or whatever, but thanks again for your time.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. We lose Kate?
We must have. I just wanted to, I just thought I'd see it if you wanted me to hang out recording, right?